What is good, everybody? Welcome one and all to TGI Football here on the SB Nation NFL Show. A reminder before we go any further that this show is presented to you by our friends at DraftKings. DraftKings Sportsbook is an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app today and use code SBNFL for a special offer when you sign up. That is code SBNFL only at DraftKings Sportsbook. As noted, this is TGI Football on the SB Nation NFL Show. Subscribe to the SB Nation NFL Show wherever you get your podcasts. Leave a rating, write a review. Those things make us happy. You can also watch the show on the SB Nation NFL YouTube channel. And if you don't, it is basically an indication that you don't care for us at all, which is really hurtful. When I say us, my name is RJ Ochoa from Blog of the Boys. The he's, hims that are here with me. Brandon Lee Gowton from Bleeding Green Nation. Stephen Serda from Arrowhead Pride. Stephen, happy Friday to you.
It would be a happy Friday if the Packers weren't so terrible and the Lions threw the ball in the second half of that game.
BLG, did you enjoy the latest edition of Thursday Night Football and everyone commiserating over how terrible it was?
It probably was not a good game for you as someone who has been a skeptic of the Lions.
Yeah, last night was I put on my shoes to get ready to walk it back. You know what I'm saying? Like I wasn't ready. You know what I mean? And I'm kind of getting closer to that. We're obviously going to recap that game. We have a lot to get to. We will also do our Pick 3 segment, which is brought to you by DraftKings. We have our locks of the week. We have our same game parlay as noted. I mean, we have a lot to do. So that's why I put the shoes on for this, Brandon.
I say good for the Lions. You know, it was good to see a lot of blue there at Lambeau Field. Not, I think, something that even Lions fans expected to see. And they took over. And I think the Lions have not totally newly, but have kind of solidified themselves here as a team that people have to respect in the NFC. Road wins over the Chiefs and the Packers. I think Lions have won now. Our good friend Jeremy Reisman tweeted out something like 9 straight division games, or 7 straight division games. Like, that's crazy for a team who has never even won the NFC North ever. For them to pull that off, it's truly is like this new era of Lions football.
I wanted to dilly-dally before we started talking about football, Stephen, but seems like Brandon is just like ready to, jump in.
We're here to talk football. What do you want to dilly-dally about?
I don't know. Hear about your personal lives. I mean, Survivor's back. Yeah. I know you haven't watched it yet, but I mean, still.
I did have it spoiled for me. Come on, man. Someone quote tweeted something about it. Someone who I don't even follow for like anything Survivor related. So like someone who covers as a sport. I don't want to out this person. They didn't do it on purpose, but it's just like, come on, man. And it wasn't within the 24-hour rule, RJ. It was like the very next morning. Like, come on.
Stephen, before we go any further, it's very difficult for me to agree with Aaron Rodgers on anything. But I once heard him say at the peak of Game of Thrones that you have 24 hours.
This was not 24 hours at all.
Well, I know. But I'm just like, I'm explaining the rule to Stephen. So like after a show ends, like an episode of something that like is a big, very popular thing. You have 24 hours where it's politically, appropriate to not say anything on the internet. But after 24 hours, everyone has seemingly had enough time to kind of, watch it, whether they were busy, this, that, or the other. Do you think that's fair?
It's probably fair, but I think you should give it a couple of days because sometimes I don't have time to watch stuff. So I load up on the weekends and get caught up on everything. But especially for something like that, like a reality television show, I think 24 hours is more than enough time.
Well, it's also like if you tweet about it regularly and then I happen to see it, well, that's my fault. But like if you never tweet about Survivor and all of a sudden you're just throwing a random Survivor tweet out there that has a spoiler in it, like what are we doing? Like where's that coming from? How was I supposed to anticipate that? Like
that's a little fair.
Out of left field.
That's fair. Last part of the dilly dally segment. I saw this earlier. I think you've both seen this. Breaking Bad ended 10 years ago today on the subject of television shows. That is one of the only times I've ever watched anything over Sunday Night Football. I vividly remember the finale airing at the same time that the New England Patriots were in Atlanta taking on the Falcons. So
I rewatched Breaking Bad over the summer. I had not rewatched it since it had ended. So it was the first time I had ever really binged it because I watched it as it came out.
Okay. Good job on the dilly and the dally. 34-20, the final score at Lambeau Field, which was decorated in Honolulu blue, as you said, Brandon. Lions fans really feeling themselves. How could they not? This game was over pretty early. The final score was 34-20, and I think maybe the end of the third quarter we thought like, I don't know, maybe the Packers could do this, but they very clearly could not. It was 24-3 early in the second quarter, Brandon. Again, it just was a mismatch. I mean, the Lions are so much of a better football team than the Packers. Matt LaFleur kind of did the like self-hate thing afterwards. I don't know that that's a stunt to try to throw some blame off of them or whatever, but these are two teams in two different classes right now.
This had reason to get ugly for the Lions. At least it looked like in the beginning. Jared Goff throws that pick. It's like, okay, here the Packers go. They can get the crowd behind them. Jump started. Nope. Lions defense settles down, holds them to a field goal. And then basically from there on out, it just felt like every time, because I was watching the game, but I was also doing some other things. It just felt like every time I looked at the TV, the Lions kept having the ball. I'm like, wait, how did they get the ball back again? And they're scoring a touchdown again. So, I know the game kind of got a little bit closer towards the end, but to me, ever since the Lions really got that first touchdown there, where Rasul Douglas got cooked by Amon-Ra St. Brown, it was pretty much over from a vibe perspective. And that's, again, kind of just have to appreciate how different that is for the Lions. Like, when have the Lions ever just been able to say that and be this team and meet expectations, maybe even exceed expectations? They're very much legitimate. Jared Goff looks good. I'm buying the Lions stock.
Yeah, I was always in on the Lions. Dan Campbell is doing a really good job. Jared Goff is playing really good football. Their defense has improved since last season, where it was one of the worst in the NFL last season. And their defensive line is playing really well right now. Aiden Hutchinson has been fantastic so far this season. And their secondary is kind of falling apart right now. And I think the Packers should have done a better job of testing them deep down the field early in the game. And they just didn't do that. And they couldn't stay on the field. And the Lions offense is so good and talented, and their offensive line so good that it burned the Packers early in the game, and they couldn't ever climb out of the hole. Like, it was just complete and utter domination in the first half. And then in the second half, the Lions were just like, we're just going to run the ball the entire time, and there's nothing you can do about it.
I mean, this really had the feel of like everything Detroit touches turns to gold, except for the Jared Goff interception at the beginning. Jared Goff even, whipped out the wheels in this game. I mean, like, it just was kind of like a party. Like, this was like the best kind of game to watch if you're a fan of the Lions. Like, it's never in doubt. You're cruising. You're dominating a team that, you've struggled against for a very long time. The only like weird thing going on with the Lions right now is the Jahmyr Gibbs usage. But like, does it matter? Like, I know that like it feels like, you're doing this in an illogical way. So it bothers us to a small degree, but like, it's hard to have a problem with anything the Lions are doing. It's hard to not buy into your point, Brandon. Like, their next two games after the mini bye at that are against Carolina, and then they're down in Tampa. Like, all the reason in the world to believe they're going to get to 5-1. Like, it's all here. It's all happening. It's all coalescing. Their one loss was a close one against the Seahawks team that we all believe in as well. So yeah, all the flowers to Detroit. They have earned them. Good for them. Plus, I believe I missed this. Like, I didn't write this down at the end of the game. Dan Campbell's the first Lions head coach to win 4 straight games against the Packers since like 1980 or something like that. Very cool. Like, it's got to feel nice to be above water, Brandon.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get at with the takeover in the stand. Like, that just doesn't happen. I don't recall many teams of really any fan base going into Lambeau and kind of like really taking over like that. So pretty impressive. It is 8 of their last 9 division games that they've won, according to our good friend Jeremy Reisman from Pride of Detroit, which, by the way, has a ton of great Lions coverage. And I think you kind of just see that. Like, there's a real energy and fervor, and it makes sense for a team that's been starved and bad for so long. There's actual buy-in now, and they're like, no, this is for real. This is unlike, for a lot of Lions fans, this is unlike anything they've seen in their lifetime. So that has to be really exciting. And they're 3-1 now with a win over the second team place in their division. And then the other 2 teams in their division haven't even won a game yet. They're the 0-3 Vikings and the Bears, who are probably the worst team in the league. So yeah, life is feeling really good for them, and it's long overdue. So good for them.
You mentioned
Stephen. Go ahead, Stephen. Go first.
I was just going to say, you mentioned the Jahmyr Gibbs usage, and that is frustrating, but also never believe an offensive coordinator when he talks about they're going to use this player in all these unique and special ways because he's got such a special skill set, because it never manifests to anything. And I think Jahmyr Gibbs is an extremely talented player who should have a bigger role as the season moves on. And that's kind of scary because they're playing so well right now when Jahmyr Gibbs is the more talented running back and they've got a good rushing attack already. And then I don't know what they're going to get out of Jameson Williams later on in the season, but like this team could get better as the year goes on. And that's kind of scary because they're playing really well right now. Like I think this team right now, early in the season, is performing above expectation already, and they could only get better as the year goes on.
I think that's well said. The Jameson Williams thing is lurking. Like, I think we all forgot that. And I mentioned everything they touched turning to gold. Like the Sam Laporta pick looks great. Like, I mean, obviously we're, obsessing over the Jahmyr Gibbs thing, but like they're getting extreme contribution from their rookie class. Brian Branch, thankfully it appears that he's all right. I mean, and Brandon, the point I was going to make, like on the culture thing, it kind of feels like, incidentally enough, like when the Bucks got good, the Milwaukee Bucks, like this, like team that just like nobody is accustomed to like being good, and you know what I mean, like now is like a part of the mix and a part of the fold, and just like turns into a mainstay. It's kind of like a random thing. Again, funny enough that that's a Wisconsin team, given that this was Green Bay. But speaking of the Packers, this last week has kind of been the exposing of some of the teams that were like either undefeated or 2-1 or whatever. The other Bucks happened on Monday night. The Packers on Thursday night. Steven, this was a tough look for Jordan Love. I mean, and a tough look for the Packers offense all the way around. Yeah, they made things close at the very end, but they just look so far behind even the Vikings offensively. I know that they're winless, but like they look like they're, in mud compared to everybody else.
Yeah, and I wasn't really buying into the Packers just yet. I know they looked good against the Bears, but we know now that the Bears are one of the absolute worst teams in football. And, and they pull off the come from behind win against the Saints, but like that's Derek Carr, Jameis Winston. Like I know we like the Saints, but part of that is because of their easy schedule, not because we think the Saints are a legitimate contender or something like that. And like they're one of the youngest teams in football. And last night it looked like they played the toughest team that they have faced, and they played a contending team. And I don't think we should have been shocked by the way that game played out last night, because the Packers are still figuring a lot of things out. And they just got Christian Watson back last night, who I think is extremely talented and could be a star if he can stay on the football field for them. And Aaron Jones is unhealthy right now. And we know AJ Dillon's just not really much of anything. Like he's just not a super productive running back. So Aaron Jones was on a snap count last night, and the offensive line is kind of falling apart. Like David Bakhtiari is maybe the worst contract in all of football right now. And they just put him on IR for the third or fourth consecutive season or something like that. So the Packers have a lot of things to figure out, but I think we shouldn't have been surprised by how dominant the Lions were against the Packers last night.
Yeah, Packers are really banged up. In addition to everything that Stephen mentioned there, I mean, no Elgton Jenkins, Devondre Campbell is out, Jarby Alexander out. So that's definitely a reason why they were even underdogs in that game against the Falcons in week 2. They've just kind of not been able to get right health-wise so far, and certainly playing on Thursday Night Football, it doesn't help matters for them. So I'm not ready to write them off as a team. It is a pretty concerning performance from Jordan Love, I think. Certainly in a national, like that's not fun if you're a Packers fan and you're trying to buy into this and you're defending him against everything, and then he goes out on national television and does what he did with 2 interceptions, took 5 sacks. Certainly was not helped again by an injured offensive line, but still didn't look pretty, didn't look great. And I think you have to question, okay, what are the Packers really going to be able to do this year with him?
All right. Well, that was Thursday Night Football. Are you both excited for 1 week from now to be discussing the Chicago Bears and Washington Commanders Thursday night game?
I am.
If Justin Fields starts running, then yeah, hopefully.
I mean, like Thursday Night Football has changed hands how many times? Like it's the same thing. It's almost like playing the game so quickly after a Sunday game was a terrible idea. It's almost like there's nothing but 20 years of data to prove this.
If the Bears lose to the Broncos this weekend and then to the Commanders on Thursday Night Football, I mean, just like what are we doing at that point? It's all-time low.
Well, we'll see whether or not you think the Bears are going to lose to the Broncos this weekend, Brandon, because we're going to preview every single game in Week 4, or the remaining games of Week 4 in the NFL. But before we do that, we are going to do our Pick 3, which is brought to you by DraftKings Sportsbook. DraftKings is an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app today and use code SBNFL for a special offer when you sign up. That is code SBNFL. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook. So our same game parlay this week, gentlemen, is an AFC West showdown. The two best teams in the AFC West, some people are saying. Those are not real people. The Las Vegas Raiders are visiting the Los Angeles Chargers in a fight for second place because Patrick Mahomes exists. But nevertheless, we have a same game parlay to put together. Last week, Brandon, we almost did it. Speaking of the Chiefs, we went Kansas City, Chicago. You hit on your leg of the parlay. I hit on my leg of the parlay. 2/3 of the tripod were there, but Stephen believed in Patrick Mahomes just a bit too much. And it could not happen. It did not happen. We have never done this together. And we were right there, Steven. So before we get in, are you going to apologize for missing last week?
I'm not going to apologize because Patrick Mahomes would have hit it if the Marquez Valdez-Scantling touchdown just before halftime counted and it got taken off the board because of another bogus Jawan Taylor penalty that the NFL is just singling him out for now. And I'm not going to apologize because I was right. It was right there, and it got taken off the board because of this bogus witch hunt against the Chiefs right tackle.
That sounds like moving the goalposts to me, Brandon. I don't know about you. Nevertheless, let's get into it. We are all 1-2 on the season in terms of correct legs predicted, so a nice tie in that sense. Brandon, you got one correct last week, and I'm a gentleman, so that means you get to go first right now. What is your leg of this week's same game parlay?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Justin Herbert, 250 plus, so the over on 249.5 passing yards. Justin Herbert is averaging 313 passing yards per game early on the season. The Raiders have the 4th worst passing DVOA defense. Justin Herbert is no stranger to having big games against the Raiders defense. I think he can keep it going, in part because he has to. So I'm going to keep it easy, keep it simple. That's not really the highest bar for him to clear. I think he can do it. I want to win. I want to finally actually hit on one of these same game parlays. So I'm going a little bit more conservative with mine, but I want it to hit. I want to win the people some money. So Justin Herbert taking the over.
Yeah, the line on this particular leg is -270, so something fairly likely. Obviously, good for you. Again, I'm with you. Like, let's just take the low hanging fruit. There's no, we don't need to be heroes here, Steven. So let's just be cool. This has been my mentality for a while. Last week, I went with Travis Kelce as an anytime touchdown scorer, not even knowing that Taylor Swift would be in the building. Obviously, that changed the script completely, and it just had to happen. So that's not going to be the case this week. But I am going back to the same well. Devontae Adams, anytime score at -105 for me, partly because what else do the Raiders have? Partly because I don't really put a lot of stock into these like trade rumblings, rumors, things that are percolating, but it certainly would help for Devontae Adams to be boosted. Not that anybody doubts his abilities, but it just makes sense to me. Like if the Raiders are going to get in the end zone, and I don't think they'll get blanked, Devontae Adams will be a part of that. So that is my leg. Steven, what will be yours that is going to ruin this for us?
This might be the risk. This is probably the riskiest leg of the same game parlay this week, but I think it's safe. I'm taking Keenan Allen over 7.5 receptions plus 114. Keenan Allen had 18 catches last week, and Mike Williams done for the season. Unfortunately, tore his ACL against the Vikings last week. So Keenan Allen's going to get fed a bunch of volume. We'll see how the other wide receivers and maybe Austin Eckler's back this week. We'll see how everybody factors into it. But Keenan Allen's been an absolute monster this season, and Justin Herbert's been great. He's targeting the hell out of Keenan Allen. I think 7.5 receptions, easy outcome for Keenan Allen this week.
It would be very hard for Stevens to hit and then mine not to hit. So you do have a little bit of a tandem going there.
You do technically have the longest odds, Stephen. So you when you said it might be the most difficult, it's objectively the most difficult one of the three to hit. So we'll see. Fingers crossed that this is the week that is our same game parlay once again presented by our friends at DraftKings. All right, gentlemen, the time has come to preview the rest of the slate across week 4 in this particular NFL season. A few ground rules for the newer members of the audience. Like I always say, what took you so long? Why weren't you here? Why would the people have not been here at this point, Brandon?
There's really no good acceptable answer.
There we go. But if you're new, nevertheless, two important things. We will each administer a lock of the week, which is what it sounds like. We're locking up a game. We're locking up against the spread. The three of us all hit last week. Brandon, you locked up the Chiefs against the Bears in the game. We had the same game parlay going. I locked up the Steelers against the Raiders. Steven, you correctly locked up the Seahawks against the Panthers. You are both undefeated in locks this season. I am 1-2. So thankfully, I finally got on the board. Other note, to note, and that's that we each have a zap. If Brandon doesn't want to hear me or Steven talk about a certain game, he has the ability to offer a zap. Now, we cannot be zapped with regards to the teams that we cover here at SB Nation. That's the Cowboys, Eagles, and Chiefs. But any other team is fair game. Any other game that doesn't involve them is fair game, I should say. Everybody cool. Seatbelts buckled. No flash photography permitted. Steven, are your hands and feet inside the vehicle?
Yes.
Okay, well, they should be because we're traveling across the pond. The Atlanta Falcons visiting the Jacksonville Jaguars at Wembley Stadium. This is the Toy Story game, Brandon. Are you going to be watching that broadcast? If you do, no. I'm sure it will be great. But the Jaguars are favored by 3.
I like the idea of football being on earlier because 1 o'clock is too late to start on the East Coast. Anyway, man. I don't love
watch the Toy Story game, though? That was my first question.
No, I said no. I'm not going to do that. I really don't love this, is what I'll say, because I think the Jags, I don't really trust them right now. And I am famously the only person not in on Desmond Ridder, who it just looks like the Falcons don't even like him either. Like they clearly don't trust him to throw the football. So I guess I have to go with liking that less, and I'll take the Jags here. But I really don't feel good about either of these teams right now.
Yeah, I think I have to take the Jags and take the points in this one. Jacksonville hasn't been as good, I think, as a lot of us thought they were going to be so far to start the season. They haven't really been in sync offensively, and Trevor's still been playing well, but his pass catchers have been dropping a lot of passes, and they've just kind of looked out of sync. And the Falcons actually are like a tougher defensive matchup, I think, so far this season than probably anybody realizes. Like they've been solid, but I think at the end of the day, Jacksonville needs this a lot more. Trevor's going to show up, and they always win in London, right? Or wherever they're at. Like they always win these international games. So I think Jacksonville is going to win this game, even though they're kind of struggling right now. They really need to pick up a win.
It's worth noting, if this matters to anybody, that the Jaguars are going to be in London for 2 weeks. They play the Bills in London next week, so they're kind of camped out there. Again, they are kind of the unofficial team of London. I think what you both said is fair. It's hard to trust the Jaguars right now because they're not necessarily living up to the expectations. And when something like that doesn't happen, we tend to bounce and bail, which is what I thought would happen to the Lions, obviously. But yeah, the Falcons are just gross. I mean, like speaking of the Lions, we get all pissed off because they won't use Jahmyr Gibbs. So the Falcons, I know that Kyle Pitts finally got some targets last week, but like I can't trust it. Like if the Jaguars get hot, Trevor Lawrence is playing well, despite the like overall team dysfunction. So I'm way more inclined to trust one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL as opposed to one that Brandon, is the only person who doesn't believe in.
That's right.
So let's go Jaguars. Do we call this a true home field advantage? Like it's not home field.
No, I think it is for Jacksonville just because they've played there so many times.
Okay, that's fine. Let's move on. The Washington Commanders are visiting the Philadelphia Eagles. This is Josh Harris's first opportunity to flex as the owner of the Commanders and the Sixers. You're the person who was obsessed with this before, Brandon. So that's the only reason I bring it up. Maybe
a chance to flex. What's he going to flex? That his team sucks?
I mean, maybe.
And you don't even know if I'm talking about the Sixers or the Commanders when I said that.
The Commanders won this game in Philadelphia last year, Stephen.
Yeah.
We'll set the floor for Brandon. The Eagles are favored by the Eagles are favored by 8.5. Who are you taking? Are you laying that many points?
This is my lock of the week. Lock it in. The Eagles. Here's some stats for you.
Stephen was the person who was asked to go first, but whatever.
I don't care. Since the beginning of the Knicks, I've been waiting to talk about this game all week. Since the beginning, sorry, Stephen, not personal, but just I'm coming out of the gates hot. Since the beginning of the Nick Sirianni, Jalen Hurts combined era in 2021, the Philadelphia Eagles are 10-3-2 against the spread as home favorites. That's the best cover percentage in the NFL. And one of those losses, by the way, was when Gardner Minshew was starting last year. So, take that for what it's worth. And additionally, since Ron Rivera became head coach of the Commanders in 2020, Commanders are 8-9-1 against the spread as road dogs, as they are in this one. That is the 7th worst cover percentage in the NFL. When you look at matchups in this game, Commanders' biggest strength is their defensive line, and the Eagles have a really good offensive line. I think they're going to be able to neutralize that to some extent. And another big mismatch is also in the trenches on the other side of the ball, where the Commanders are allowing a league-high 19 sacks. That's 6 more than any other team. And it's not just because of the line is bad. It's also because Sam Howell has a tendency to hold onto the ball. He is the 9th slowest average time to throw. I think the Eagles are going to have a really, really, finally, that A game everyone's been waiting to see from them. I think they're going to dominate this team, and I will take them. I don't really care how big the line is, almost. Give me the Eagles to cover. I took it originally, whatever it was, like 7.5 earlier in the week, but I still feel good at 8.5.
Yeah, I basically agree with everything that BLG said. I think the one thing that has been worrisome about Philadelphia so far, and it's not even really worrisome, is these slow starts that they've been having to start games. But then it's like, well, you just know that they're inevitable. Like, eventually they're going to lean into the run game, and they're going to have these massive holes that offensive line is going to open up for DeAndre Swift. And then they'll get to the 1 yard line, and Jalen Hurts will fall into the end zone for a touchdown. Like, that's exactly how it's gone the last 2 games for the Eagles, like game script wise. And the Commanders got off to this fun 2-0 start, but nobody was believing in Washington right now. Like, I am rooting for Eric Bieniemy and for him to keep getting something out of Sam Howell, but Sam Howell was awful last week. Threw 4 interceptions, got totally decimated by the Bills, and this, I think, is a worse matchup for him. I think the Eagles defensive line is just going to absolutely crush him. You mentioned that he hangs onto the ball for way too long, and that's not a recipe for success against that Eagles defensive line the way that they're playing right now. So I think the Eagles are safe here, and I think they're safe here with the points. The Commanders desperately need to get to their week 5 matchup against the Chicago Bears to feel good about themselves, because this is just not going to be a fun game for them.
Yeah, I mean, it would be funny if the Eagles lost this game. And I think if we simulated this 100 times, like maybe you get the weird Commanders win, I don't know.
That's what happened last year, though. That's
right. That's what I'm saying. Like you got the weird outlier last season, and there's no Taylor Heineke to get his Jordans after this game. That's the bit I love the most. I mean, is it possible? Certainly. But to your point, Stephen, I mean, I haven't felt like the Eagles looked super threatening yet this year. And that's not meant to be like an insult. But they're undefeated in spite of that. And they're also kind of crushing teams in spite of that, which is just the weirdest, indication that that they remain an elite team. It's just not sexy. So I'll take, and I've said this all season long to this point, until the Eagles lose and show I know they haven't covered every single game, but until they show legitimate signs to abandon ship in terms of believing in them, I'm going to take them. I'm willing to lay the points. So clean sweep from all of us. I would say good luck on your lock, Brandon, but I'm really hoping that it blows up in your face. All right, let's move on. The game of the week. Is there any question that the Miami Dolphins visiting the Buffalo Bills is the most anticipated game this week? Quickly, Stephen, Bills favored by 2.5. But the quickly thing is, I saw somebody say that all games between these two played in Buffalo should be in December, and all the ones played in Miami should be this time of year. This game is in Buffalo, so we won't get a snow globe game between them.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be fine with that. I'd be fine with the schedule makers taking that into account.
Okay, well, how do you feel about this game? Buffalo 2.5-point favorites, despite the fact that Miami dropped 70 on the definitely not a horrible team, Denver Broncos, coached by Sean Payton.
I think that the Bills should not be favored in this game. I am buying into everything the Miami Dolphins are doing right now. And I know that's easy to say after they dropped 70 points last week, and dropped 70 points. It made it look easy. But it's just offensively, I just don't know how you stop them. And it doesn't matter who they put back there at running back. It's just, as long as they're fast, they're gonna get them into open space, and they're gonna be explosive. And what they're doing in the passing game, they didn't even have Jalen Waddle last week, and he's been cleared to return to action this week, so he'll be available. Tyreek Hill is totally unguardable right now. I'm buying into all of the Dolphins hype. And I think more impressively, their defense has been better than I anticipated it being coming into the season. And this defense, it's going to add Jalen Ramsey, like possibly midway through the year. So I just think that the Bills last week needed that dominant win, and they did it over an inferior Washington team. But I'm still not totally sold on Buffalo. And we've seen Josh Allen have this up and down type of performances. He insists every week on trying to throw interceptions and turn over the football. So I'm not totally sold on the Bills right now, but I am buying all into the Dolphins, like in this offensive performance. I just think they're totally unstoppable right now. So I'll take Miami and the points.
What do you got, RJ?
You can't win MVP in September. I guess this is technically October, but you can widen the gap, right? And that gap helps when, you stumble across the rest of the season. This is a big potential boost for Tua's MVP candidacy. Like Tua checks all the narrative boxes, right, for MVP. Like he's never won it before. The reigning MVP isn't like lighting up, the stat sheet. Jalen Hurts isn't either. I suppose other challengers like Justin Herbert exist, but he's on a really good team. He's on a feel-good team story. Like everybody's into Mike McDaniel, and everybody kind of wants this to be cool. Like everyone's bought in. And so you go to Buffalo, you slay the Bills, you outperform Josh Allen. Like that is a big kind of, resume bullet point, I think, on the Tua MVP case, presuming they continue to kind of play par for the course across the rest of the season. I'm completely with Stephen. Y'all both know I don't believe in the Bills. Now, I think they were impressive last week in their throttling of Washington. They obviously had their way with Vegas. Like they've, been able to kind of stabilize things after a touchy first week of the season. But they are still the same reckless team. Like that overall kind of disposition still lives and lurks within them. I think the Dolphins are better coached, and I think highly of Sean McDermott. I just think Mike McDaniel is in his bag right now, and it's really difficult to bet against the Dolphins. And so if you're telling me that I get points if I have to bet on the Dolphins, like I will totally do that. So I'm taking Miami.
Well, it's cold up in Buffalo, and I guess it's only fitting that I'm in the icebox.
Let's go.
Fun fact about the icebox: winter is coming.
Brr! I'm in the icebox.
It's me every time. That's not like a noise you make normally. Anyway, I'm gonna take the Bills here. No one loves the Dolphins or has been higher on the Dolphins earlier more than me. I've been right about them all along, as RJ can attest to, ever since I saw them practice against the Eagles in training camp last year. But I think there's a bit of an overreaction to such an epic win last week against the Broncos, not only in terms of national perception, but also maybe smelling themselves a little bit. And I think this line tells you that the Bills have more of a chance than I think too many people are like, the Dolphins are getting points. That's a no-brainer. I think that's a trap. I would not fall into that trap. The Bills rank first in DVOA, and I believe they're second in point differential. Still a very good team. And their only loss this season is that weird, Josh Allen lost the game for them in week 1. He is
the most important player on the team played horrible.
But I mean, like, it wasn't like, wow, they're a really bad team. Yeah, that was a really bad performance by him, without a doubt. But I think, again, we talk about volatility. It's not just a bad thing. It also means he can also get very hot. And I think the Bills at home, I am going to take them to win.
For what it's worth, I don't think this changes your opinion, Brandon, but Sean McDermott, right before we started recording, ruled Jordan Poyer out. I don't know that that's like shocking or anything, but I mean, just context so that we're all aware. Okay. Well, first Icebox game of the week. By the way, the Burr thing, I don't know that you recall this. That was the impetus for it was our initials were Brandon, Rob, and RJ. So it was BRR. So it was Burr. That was, again, the whole story of the Icebox. The Minnesota Vikings, the winless Minnesota Vikings, Stephen, are visiting the Carolina Panthers and bringing 4 points to lay down in the process. The Vikings, I'm stealing a line from Brandon. Last year, everybody said they're not as good as their record said they were. They're probably not as bad as an 0-3 record would indicate. They are definitely the best looking 0-3 team. They've just been on the wrong end of a handful of moments, and they've been critical moments, which is why they're winless at this point.
Yeah, and this is my lock of the week. I didn't realize for the second consecutive week, my lock was against the Panthers, but I'm going to roll with it anyways because I feel very confident the Vikings are going to win this game. And maybe it winds up being a weird thing where it does come down to a final possession and Kirk Cousins has to lead a game-winning drive and Justin Jefferson makes an incredible play because that's just how the Vikings play football now, I guess. But eventually they're going to win a football game. Like offensively, we know that they are just simply too talented to be 0-3 right now. And they've had some bad beats, but it's because their defense is just bad. Their defense is absolutely awful. But offensively, they can put up points with the best offenses in the league. And the Panthers are not a good football team, whether it's Andy Dalton or Bryce Young starting this week. So I'm confident the Vikings are going to win and get their first win of the season after that tough start. And I think that they're just going to keep rolling offensively and put up a lot of points. So I think the 4-line spread is an easy cover for Minnesota this week.
Yeah, the Vikings are just due, honestly, for a win because, I think they're not an 0-4 team. They're not good, but they're not that bad. And the Panthers are pretty bad. And typically, Kirk Cousins, you can count on him to beat the bad teams. That is kind of something he's done throughout his career. So I'm not as confident as Steven. I don't feel like the lock thing is makes me feel a little bit uneasy, but who am I to doubt him? I mean, he's also perfect on the year in his locks. So I will take the Vikings to win this game and cover.
I certainly agree with everything you said in an objective sense, Steven. But I've just been burned by believing in the Vikings way too many times, right? Like I'm just, I've played the like butter knife on my like hand games, like, and I'm hurting myself at this point. Like I don't want skin in the game when it comes to the Vikings. So kudos to you. The Vikings host the Chiefs next week. And it would just be like the funniest thing in the world if they started to climb out of this hole and then beat the Chiefs and then like created this conversation, whatever. That will be our same game parlay next week, by the way. Lots of offensive action there. I'm taking Minnesota as well. No icebox here. Let's move on. The Cincinnati Bengals, Brandon, are visiting the Tennessee Titans, a 2022 divisional round rematch. The Bengals obviously have become a darling of the NFL in that time since they beat the 1-seeded Titans. Cincinnati favored by 2.5. Joe Burrow didn't look completely healthy, obviously, on Monday night. The Titans look like just a gross football team all the way around. Your thoughts?
Former Eagle and current member of the Titans, Andre Dillard, their left tackle, has allowed 6 sacks so far this season. That is the most in the NFL and is double the amount of the next worst offensive tackle in terms of sacks allowed. So, which is, by the way, former Chief Andrew Wiley, and he's tied with some other players. Anyway, so the Titans offensive line's not good, and that was expected heading into the year. And I just don't really love their vibe, their energy. I know the Bengals haven't looked like the Bengals that we've seen this year, but I think Monday could have been a performance where it was not Joe Burrow looking amazing and righting the ship entirely. I think this is a win, or that was a game for them to build on, and I think they will build on that here, and they will win this game.
I totally agree. I was tempted when I was first looking at this game. I was kind of tempted to lean towards the Titans because this seems like the typical, like, Joe Burrow's hurt, obviously not right now, and right at the moment, and the Bengals offense just can't seem to really get going and look like that explosive offense that we're used to seeing. But the Titans are just so bad. They're the hardest team to watch in football right now. They cannot do anything offensively. Their defensive line's great, and that makes it even harder to watch them because then the opposing offense has to win these like tough, gritty football games, and they're just not fun to watch in any way. And the Bengals defense was really impressive against the Rams. They totally dominated that offensive line. And the Bengals defense continues to be underrated along with their pass rush. And their secondary is legitimately good and not getting enough hype right now. So I just don't think the Titans are going to be able to do enough offensively to actually win this football game. So I have to take the Bengals, even if Joe Burrow's not right now. I just think the Bengals defense is going to put together another really impressive game like they did last week against the Rams.
I think we all agree that the Titans will pull out 6 or 7 tough, gritty wins, and some of them will be shocking. And like, we should have seen them coming because that's just kind of like, the MO. But I'm fine, being wrong about those 6 or 7. Or like, I'm fine not predicting those just because they're too difficult. Now, you mentioned the Tennessee defensive line, Steven, then get to Joe Burrow, obviously. And that was like actually kind of like the theme, right, of that divisional round game. Wasn't Burrow sacked like 9 times or something like that, and they still lost, whatever the case may be, or case was at the time. But yeah, I mean, I'm tempted to hedge and say that maybe Cincinnati covers, but like that's too like narrow of a window.
You mean the Titans
I don't want to
cover?
threat. The Titans cover. But that's just too difficult of a thread or needle to thread. Excuse me. So I'll take the Bengals and lay the points. Elsewhere in the AFC North, Stephen, the Baltimore Ravens are coming off of a really embarrassing loss. And visiting the Cleveland Browns, who look like they may have woken up offensively, even in the aftermath of the Nick Chubb injury. The Browns are 2.5-point favorites at home against the artists formerly known as the Browns. Nobody ever makes that joke, by the way. Where are you going and why?
I'm going to pick the Baltimore Ravens in this game, despite the fact that I don't. We make fun of the Chargers and the injury thing every year, but we should really focus more on the Ravens and their injuries over the last 3 seasons, because it's every year now the injury list just piles up and piles up and piles up, and they're really banged up again this season. But I still have faith in Lamar Jackson, and I think they're still figuring things out offensively and kind of figuring out who they want to be. Odell Beckham was out last week. Rashad Bateman got banged up again, and he hasn't really done anything this season. Mark Andrews hasn't been totally healthy. And now Melvin Gordon, I guess, is their starting running back. Like, it all sounds bad, but I have faith in Lamar. I have faith in the Ravens just being better than the Browns, who I'm not impressed by in any way. The Browns defense is spectacular, but offensively, Deshaun Watson doesn't look good, and their offensive line hasn't been very good. So I think they can get pressure on the Browns. I'm not buying into anything with Cleveland. I'm going to take the Ravens, and I'm going to take the points in this game.
Oh, easy call for me.
Brandon, hang on, Brandon, because I want to set you up because I love the Icebox drop. I'm taking the Ravens as well.
Why?
Don't believe in the Browns.
Doing?
Because they have an amazing quarterback. They have an offensive coordinator.
Yeah, amazing quarterback who couldn't beat Gardner Minshew last week as an 8.5 home favorite.
Okay, well, Jalen Hurts lost to Taylor Heineke last year as a 10-point favorite at the time? Like, are we going to play this game all the time?
One loss of his last 18 games.
Okay, well, it's still lost. I mean, like, we're still,
it's 1 out of 18.
I mean, yeah, and he bounced back and has looked great ever since. So, like, the same thing could happen to Lamar here. I mean, so the Ravens, I trust more. I'm willing to give them I think they're better coached. I think they have the better quarterback. I think they have more skill position players. Zay Flowers, I mean, remains the biggest game changer, the biggest non-quarterback game changer in this game. Although, man, Amari Cooper looked so good last week, and I know the Cowboys have come a long way, but just it still bummed me out just terribly. But yeah, I'm taking the Ravens. So you know what that means, Brandon.
I'm in the icebox once again.
Fun fact about the icebox: winter is coming.
I'm in the icebox.
On the injury thing that Stephen mentioned, I mean, maybe don't play your starters so much in the preseason and be obsessed with winning preseason games.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know if that's connected, but that's something to think about.
Hey, Cleveland didn't play their starters like at all in the preseason, so maybe something to that.
When RJ mentioned good coaching, better coaching. Well, let me tell you that the Browns have one of the very best, if not the best, defensive coordinator in the NFL. The Browns defense this year has been on the field for 39 drives. Can you guess how many drives of those 39 they've allowed a touchdown on?
2.
1. Just 1.
Wow. More than 0.
This defense is for real. And look, I'm not here to sing Deshaun Watson's praises, and I don't think he's been great, but I don't even think he has to be great is the thing. This defense is the real deal. Myles Garrett, real deal. That front as a whole looks really good. So yeah, I'm gonna take the Browns to cover 2.5 here at home. I think they win this game.
Embarrassing. Okay, so 2 ice boxes for Brandon, none for you and I, Steven. The Pittsburgh Steelers are visiting the Houston Texans on Sunday. Did either of you know that J.J. Watt is getting put in the Texans Ring of Honor in this game?
No, he doesn't really post on social media, so I wouldn't know that.
Oh, okay. Was it JJ who spoiled Survivor for you?
No.
Okay. Well, the Steelers are 2.5-point favorites on the road against the Texans. CJ Stroud coming off an offensive rookie of the month performance in the AFC. He's been incredible. We're 3 games in, but obviously has looked the best among all rookie quarterbacks. And some of that is that, Anthony Richardson and Bryce Young haven't even played all of those games. That being said, I'll go first. I'm taking the Houston Texans. I believe, and I just, man, I know we all were super pumped up about the Steelers, but the offense just looks it's so hard to watch. I mean, it's so hard to trust and believe in. And I don't know that I believe in the Stroud Texans, being super amazing all the time, but I think they have way more potential to put up more points than the Steelers, even against the mighty Pittsburgh defense. And so if I'm getting points, I'm totally taking the Texans. Steven.
Yeah, this is a tough game for me because the Steelers offense has just been awful, just brutal to watch, and they can't get anything going. But I tend to think, and I'm in on CJ Stroud. I am in on everything that he has done so far this season. And DeMeco Ryans as a head coach, I think the Texans are moving in a really good direction right now, and there's reason to be excited about them here in the near future. But I still think last week was one of those games where everything just kind of fell in place for Stroud and the Texans to just pull off that big upset and kind of dominate the Jaguars. But the Steelers defense is carrying them to victory right now. And the Texans have so many injuries along the offensive line that I think that TJ Watt and that company and that crew are going to be able to carry them to another win this week, kind of like they did last week. The Steelers defense and their pass rush has been great. And so despite all of the offensive shortcomings, I still think that the defense is good enough to carry them to a win against a team like the Texans. So I'm going to take the Steelers.
Last week was Kenny Pickett's first game without turning the ball over. Maybe he's figured something out a little bit in that regard. But, I mean, I'm with you guys in terms of not feeling good. No one can feel good about that offense. It's kind of pathetic. But at the same time, I still have to take the Steelers. It doesn't work like this in the sense of, the Steelers have just been this very incredibly functional organization for so long. And the Texans have been, the antithesis of that. It's not that simple when you're looking at a matchup like this, but I think that if in a game where I'm not really feeling certain, I almost want to take the Texans, but I just don't think I can do it yet. I'd rather be a little bit late on them and not give them the benefit of the doubt here. I'd rather just lead with the Steelers.
You know where I am.
Fun fact about the icebox. Winter is coming.
I'm in the icebox. That's right. Steven, maybe get a little bit more brave. You know what I mean? You're not even in the icebox at all yet. That's all I'm saying. The Buccaneers are visiting the Saints. Jameis Winston revenge game opportunity, it seems, Brandon. New Orleans laying 3.5 in the Superdome.
What? No. What is?
We can move to this one. We don't have to spend a lot of time.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
No. I will take Saints 3.5. I'll take Saints win, but Bucks cover.
I am going to take the Bucks in this one. I think their defense has been playing really well, and Baker better than I thought he would be. So I'm going to take the Bucks.
Yeah, I'm not here. You're in the icebox, Steven. I'm taking the Saints, even with Jameis. I'm just.
Fun fact about the icebox. Winter is coming.
I'm in the icebox. It never gets old. It really doesn't. Steven, the Rams are in Indianapolis, 1-point favorites, coming off of a really gross game. This game's gross. In fact, I'm as happy as Steven, just because.
Wait, didn't you just use his app?
No, Steven did.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't realize that.
This is a good matchup for the Rams offense. I am going to take them over the Colts.
I think people might be overreacting on both sides here. Oh, the Rams lost. Oh, the Colts won. I think the Rams actually win this game.
Who's picking the Colts? What do you what do you mean? Who's overreacting?
The Colts are. It's a pick 'em basically. I think the Rams should be favored.
Well, they're on the road.
Here.
I mean, that's part of it. I
think the Rams should be favored by more, or should be favored at all. The Rams should be -1. Or they are.
They are.
Sorry. They should be bigger favorites then.
This is a mess.
It shouldn't just be a pick 'em. It should be like Rams -2 or 2.5.
They're on the road. That's what this is.
I'm gonna take the Rams.
Thank you for effectively saying that 6 times. I'll also take the Rams. Good thing we got a couple of boring games out of the way. I know this game looks gross, but the Broncos are in Chicago and 3-point favorites in the process. That's how bad the Bears are, Stephen. This game
like think about that. You lost you just allowed 70 points and now you're 3-point favorites on the road. That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, this game is beautifully gross to me, Stephen. Like I'm like weirdly masochistically interested in this game.
Me too. I'm going to take the Bears in this game.
No,
You're taking the Bears?
on.
Yes.
Oh no.
Why? Explain your reasoning.
I have to believe that coaching staff knows that they're going to get fired. Like, you can't come into this season with expectations of like potentially being a playoff team or something like that and be this bad through 3 games. They are the worst team in football, and it's not even close. Justin Fields has to start running the ball. They have to start giving him design runs. They have to try to get him into space. And you saw the way the Dolphins just absolutely gashed this Broncos defense last week. Like, I understand that Denver is like, oh, we're motivated this week. You weren't motivated last week when you gave up 70 points. I just don't buy into anything that the Broncos are doing right now. They are awful. I think Sean Payton is terrible, and I'm rooting against them actively. So I'm going to pick the Bears. I believe that Justin Fields is going to run this week and that they're finally going to be able to accomplish something offensively. I'm picking the Bears.
There's no way you believe that. You definitely want that.
I'm talking myself into it. I've been talking myself into it all week.
By the way, this didn't come up here, but it's been something that's on my mind as a tangent about podcasting. It's something I'm guilty of. I'm not trying to point fingers at others and say I'm not guilty of this as well. I think collectively we need to stop saying that's a big number. Anytime there's a big line, I was listening to some other podcasting where they're making picks. It's like, I'm guilty of that. Everyone just says that. Oh, it's a big line. Okay, yeah, we know it's a big number. Yeah, we know it's a big line. We don't have to say it. It's funny because you could really make like a super cut of all those drops. Anyway, this is not a big line. I am going to take the Broncos here. The Bears, and RJ talked about like that morbid curiosity about it. I have the Bears dead last in my power rankings, and I have the Broncos right ahead of them at 31. So it really is that battle to me in my mind, and I'm sure many people's minds, of like the 2 worst teams. The Bears rank dead last in DVOA, dead last in point differential. They're terrible. And the best thing for them would be to continue to bottom out and get a number 1 pick and replace their bad quarterback with someone else. I will take the Broncos to win.
Look, I have tried to manifest the Bears being great for a long time now. I love Matt Eberflus. I love the city of Chicago. Stephen, we were talking about hot dogs, before the show started. Like, I just love the food, like love the culture. Like, again, I'm all in, but like, I just can't. They've broken me. Like, they've burned me more than the Vikings have, and you know what I mean? Like, at this point, it's more than you have to prove or earn me back. Like, you have to be functional just for me to be willing to pay attention to you. Plus, beyond all of that, which I think is objectively fair, does this not smell like a Broncos ass kicking that Sean Payton will then like beat his chest about and be like, I told y'all, like he's going to clap back at the media so hard and be like, y'all were coming at us, but Miami, they're a really great team. That's why I had interest in that job, blah, blah, blah. You know what? Like, this is setting up for Sean Payton to just gaslight everybody else for not believing in him. So Stephen, you are in the icebox. I can't believe you're in the
for Justin Fields and the Bears.
Icebox. Winter is coming.
I'm in the icebox.
Before we move on, did you guys see the clip this week of the St. Brown Brothers podcast?
Wait, the snowball or the
Equinemius St. Brown plays for the Bears, and Amon-Ra was like, do you go out after games? He was like, yeah, when we win. He was like, well, how's that work? He was like, well, I don't know. I haven't gone out after a game in a long time.
Bears haven't won since October 24th of last year. I'm hoping we can get to the year point.
Actually, before we leave this, since Brandon opened the door for pet peeves, I really hate using calendar time to describe things in sports.
I know you hate it, but
still,
the dumbest. But like, come on,
I agree. Bad. I get your point, but like, people will be like, it hasn't happened in like 290 days. Yeah, well, they weren't playing for like 200 of them, like, or not even more than that. For like, it's so stupid to me. Like, there are proper ways to contextualize this. So, whatever. Let's move on. The Raiders at the Chargers. We already talked about this game in our pick 3 segment. Now it's time to pick it. The Chargers, Stephen, at home, 5.5-point favorites over the Raiders.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Chargers here. And obviously losing Mike Williams is a blow. He was having a really nice start to the year, but Austin Eckler could be back soon. I don't know if he's going to be back this week. Joshua Kelly was just not involved last week, and he got a lot of hate for just putting up a fantasy dud, but they didn't even try to run the ball. Like the Chargers just knew they could throw on the Vikings, attack them through the air the entire game. Justin Herbert is playing maybe the best football of his career, and the Raiders just look like one of the worst teams in the NFL. So I'm going to take the Chargers despite their defense playing so poorly through the start of the season. I just think offensively they're going to be able to put it together because this Raiders defense just can't really stop anybody, especially through the air. So I think Justin Herbert's just going to carve him up.
RJ?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to believe in the Raiders. Like the Bears, like we just made the like big old joke and everything like that. And like Brandon, I know what you're gonna say, but like you can kind of talk yourself into like Justin Fields going off, right? Like we've like mildly seen but like
let's do it.
No, but like it's happened before, right? Like if you close your eyes, you can just hear me out. Like what is the thing that could happen for the Raiders? Like what Josh Jacobs goes off, like you know what I mean? Like it's just not gonna
put Aiden O'Connell in the game.
I mean,
Jimmy G gets hurt.
I just don't. But the Raiders have such a bad energy going on about them, and the Chargers don't have a good one. Brandon Staley's going to be the Bears coach next year. I'm pretty confident of this. Like, this is what I'm starting to believe. But yeah, no, I'll take the Chargers. I'll take the Chargers to win, but the Raiders to cover, like backdoor cover at the very end. Just kind of breaks bettor's hearts.
Yeah, I'll take the Chargers. I mean, I don't like fully, I am putting them in a place where I cannot give them the benefit of the doubt, but the Raiders are just even worse. They're that much worse. Jimmy G can't take care of the ball. And again, their vibes are very not good. So it's not about believing in the Chargers as much as it is just really not believing in the Raiders at all.
The San Francisco 49ers are 14-point favorites at home against the Arizona Cardinals. Don't ask me what it's like for your team to be double-digit point favorites against the Cardinals because it is not a good time. Stephen, I'll go quickly. I do think the Cardinals might be a little bit better than maybe like we all thought, but that doesn't excuse what Dallas did last week. That's just again separate things here. But I'm not betting against San Francisco in any way, shape, or form.
I'm not either. Obviously, I think the 49ers are going to win this game. Like, I think the 49ers have maybe been the most dominant team in the NFL. Like they just look spectacular. And even last week without Brandon Ayuk, it was like, well, we've got Debo and we've got Kittle and we've got McCaffrey and there's nothing you can do about it. But this Cardinals team has actually been a lot better than I think any of us thought they were going to be.
I was roasted for saying this 30 seconds ago.
I am going to go out on a limb here and say the 49ers win, but I think the Cardinals can keep it within 14 points.
You know what, Stephen?
That much better than we think they are.
That's a big number, Stephen.
It is.
It is a big number. Jonathan Gannon, 3-0 against the spread. How about that? Very surprising.
Doesn't that say that the Cardinals are better than we thought they were?
Yeah, it does. But
okay, well then why did you make fun of both of us for saying
because
this?
You have to believe that. You have to.
I said that these were separate things.
Anyway, I think the 49ers win and cover. They've looked really good for the most part this year. They're coming off extra rest, having played on Thursday the week before. Cardinals had their kind of like, like overachieving game. They won. They snuck up on the Cowboys. They surprised them. They're not going to be able to do that to the 49ers back-to-back. Cardinals, for as much as they might have some good things going on, it's still a limited team we're talking about. And I think that's going to show the talent disparity is going to show against the 49ers, who are just way, way better.
By the way, just speaking, about Cowboys fans, I could totally see maybe it's like a close game, and like I'm using that word very loosely in the first quarter. Like maybe Arizona's even up to like a 10-7 lead for a little bit. I could totally see Cowboys fans like just lamenting and tweeting like, how come nobody's talking about the Niners trailing the Cardinals? Like, just chill out. Let's come back down to earth a little bit. Anyway, speaking of the Cowboys, they are 6.5-point favorites at home against the New England Patriots. It is the return of Ezekiel Elliott, BLG, who Jerry Jones said while we've been on recording here is a Ring of Honor type of candidate, which is true. But it's just funny to say when Jimmy Johnson is still excluded from the association.
I think the Patriots play to the level of their competition. I think they're one of those teams. I think they're going to muck it up against the Cowboys, and I don't think they win, but I do think they cover this 6.5-point spread, and I feel pretty confident in it.
I think after last week's embarrassing loss for the Cowboys, they got to really put it together. And I do agree the Patriots will probably make this make this kind of hard to watch because that's what Bill Belichick and his defense does. But I think the Cowboys win, and I think they win easily after last week's huge letdown.
I'm not quite spooked enough to say that the Patriots cover, but I think it is maybe like a close game at halftime, maybe closer than Cowboys fans would like. Maybe the Cowboys, stall in the red zone their first few times or something like that, and it kind of like feeds the hysteria, and it's more chum in the water. But I agree with Stephen. We've seen, the Cowboys have had like a what the hell are you doing loss almost every year in the Mike McCarthy era, and they've generally bounced back from them pretty soundly. And so this could be that. Yeah, that's kind of all I have to say about that. So
if the Cowboys lost this game, which I don't think they will, it's 49ers next, right? Like you have to win this game.
And then Chargers after that.
Yeah, so it is and I think that works in their favor. I think they know like they can't mess around. They can't play with their food. They have to win this game.
I thought it was interesting along those lines. Last week, CeeDee Lamb was asked about like, oh, y'all are too, when everything was going great for the Cowboys, like, what's this start like? And he was like, well, this start really means nothing. He was like, we're looking forward to week 5. Like he specifically said that. And that's obviously
one week at a time.
I know, but like,
not then.
Again, it was like, okay, like I know the Niners live rent free in y'all's heads, but like, just relax. Like you do have to go, you have to be the Cardinals first and the Patriots. Like you can't just, sim to the 49ers game. But okay. Sunday Night Football, Stephen, the Chiefs are visiting the Jets. They are 9-point favorites on a scale of 1 to 10. I want to use the word annoying, but how intense has the Taylor Swift narrative been around Arrowhead Pride this week?
It's been very intense. And I'm kind of past the point of at first I was like, do we have to keep talking about this, to where I'm into it now. I am not in.
You should be. You're a content creator. This is like a Super Bowl on top of a Super Bowl for you guys.
But also it's just like, yes, Travis. Like I'm just rooting for Travis Kelce and all of this. And all of a sudden, like within 2 weeks, Travis Kelce has just become the most recognizable face in all of football because of all of this. It's just been insane to watch everything unfold. So I'm actually having a lot of fun with it. And I've been like listening to Taylor Swift and like watching Taylor Swift interviews like a weirdo. Like I'm totally engaged in all of this right now.
What's your song of the week from a Taylor perspective?
I don't know any of the names of them. I just
sing it.
Them on my phone. I don't know the words.
Pop it. I don't know if we.
I can't. I've never listened to Taylor Swift in my life before this week. I can't just pull it off the top of my head. But okay. I have listened to a couple of songs.
So we'll pick the game for us, please, Stephen.
I am going to take the Chiefs here. I did say this week, like when the Chiefs lost to the Colts last week, we were like the only way they'll lose last season. We were like the only way they'll lose this game is if they turn the football over a bunch and are totally sloppy. And that's exactly what they did against the Colts, and they lost that football game. This has more of that kind of feel where if they were to be really sloppy, the Jets defense is good enough, kind of like the Bills in week 1, to where you could potentially lose this football game. But Zach Wilson's just so bad. And I know this week they're like, Chiefs are pissing Zach Wilson off. Better look out. He's going to step up. That's not going to happen. We can definitively say that's not going to happen. We have a large sample size of what Zach Wilson is in the NFL. The Chiefs defense has been spectacular through the first 3 weeks of the season. They're going to decimate that Jets offensive line. I think the Chiefs win, and I think they cover pretty easily.
Brandon, on the Jets side of things, we talk often about like how life moves fast, like things burn up quickly in the NFL. Like there was this like, I don't want to call it a honeymoon or like a grace period for the Jets, but I think there was this like understandable window where everyone was willing to give them time to like recover from the Aaron Rodgers injury. It was like a really jarring thing. And that has like completely, dissipated. Like now it's like Robert Saleh is like directly in the crosshairs of Jets fans for sticking by Zach Wilson. Okay, cool. You brought in Trevor Siemian, but like they are like one blown, blowout loss against the Chiefs on national television with Taylor Swift in the building away from like true DEFCON 1 level freak out panic from their fans and everyone around the world.
Don't need to overthink this. Jets are going to win this game. Not Jets, sorry. Chiefs are going to win this game. I did overthink it there by misspeaking. Chiefs are going to win. I'm just so annoyed on behalf of Jets fans that like, wow, you're just wasting time. This is a otherwise good roster. I'm so annoyed. You can't just waste it. You can't, and you're seeing it in terms of players being frustrated. Like, you're just wasting a season for players. You're not giving yourselves a chance with Zach Wilson. You have to try. You owe it. Joe Douglas, general manager, Saleh, like, you guys owe it to everything you're trying to build, to your culture, to a meritocracy, to not play Zach Wilson. You can't play him. You have to try something else. And no, Trevor Siemian does not count. That's not good enough. You have to go out and make a trade or sign Nick Foles. I don't think Carson Wentz works, but like, you have to do something. You can't do nothing. Nothing is not an option. And they're choosing nothing right now. And it's pathetic. And it's just like, I can't believe, and it's not like I think Jets fans are on board with it, but I'm surprised the outrage hasn't been louder. And maybe it's because they're just so beaten down. Maybe it's because there isn't really a strong presence right now. It's too depressing. But man, like, they should be just like, you have to trade for Kirk Cousins. And maybe they can't because Cousins has the no trade clause. I don't know. Maybe the Vikings don't want to give up on their season yet. I don't know. Someone brought up this name. I forget who it was. I think it was ESPN. It was either Dan Graziano or Jeremy Fowler. How do you feel about Ryan Tannehill on the Jets?
I mean,
I'm not saying like they're Super Bowl contenders all of a sudden, but like, you have to do something, right? You have to do something. And Jameis Winston isn't something either. I know the Wednesday guys on the SB Nation NFL show have been talking about like that as an option. No, that's not a real option either. That is just as good as signing Trevor Siemian. You have to do something that is at least somewhat, in theory, viable. So anyway, I'll take the Chiefs.
Yeah, I mean, this is all gross and tough. Like, I mean, I feel for Jets for Jets fans, because this has the makings of like what I was saying. Like, this is just like a Lions Packers game, right? Like the Chiefs, like everybody just partying. Like, to Steven's point, like just leaning into the Taylor Swift thing. Like, everyone just kind of having fun and like hitting the overs or whatever, their prop bets and like all their fantasy players. And like, the only reason them not even happening potentially is just because the Chiefs got out to too big of a lead, right? Like, this has the makings of like a Chiefs Mageddon, for the Jets, and they're just stuck.
Don't you
and
like
I know
Taylor Swift? Like,
I do. I don't have a problem
You're not
with
like
it.
singing her songs or anything. I feel like you haven't made any references or anything.
I don't like when things become overly popular. So like, I'm really frustrated at how every announcer feels the need to like work in a song title of hers. Like, I'm a fan of being clever and brilliant, but like, find a unique way to do that. Like, I'm really like sick of the Kevin James meme at this point. Like, we've ruined it. Like, it was funny for like a day and it's done. Like, stop. I mean, like, just find a new slant on it. That's all I'm saying. Like, I'm cool with it if you want to do that, which is why I asked Steven what his favorite song was. I love her music, but so yeah, I'm fine if like you want to do over-unders on like how many times you think she's going to be shown on the broadcast. I'm here for all that. Let's have fun with that. That's way more entertaining than the Jets stuff too. Like, the Jets are just sad and boring. And man, what like cratering New York football has had after like they had like a bit of a resuscitation. So
speaking of,
I'm taking the Jets. But yeah, so for the second time in 4 weeks, Steven, Sunday Night Football and Monday Night Football will be played at MetLife Stadium. The Seattle Seahawks are visiting the New York Giants. Brandon, when we recorded the mixtape, correct me if I'm wrong, the Seahawks were 1-point dogs. Is that correct? I don't totally remember. But it was something like that.
I think the Seahawks were 1.5-point dogs.
Right. Well, that has moved. Seattle, they are 1-point favorites, and you both may have noticed that I have not offered a lock of the week. That's because I was saving it for this. Steven, I'm locking the Seahawks up.
Zap.
Okay. Let's see. I've already said everything. They're winning. I'm taking the Seahawks to win, obviously.
Okay.
Steven.
I will also take the Seahawks to win. I just don't have any faith in this Giants offense right now.
Yeah. Again, there was a point here where the Giants were favored. Why? Why would the Giants be favored? What have they done this year to earn that? It's pathetic. Seahawks, favored. Meanwhile, what?
They're not favored. The Seahawks are favored.
I said they were at one point.
Oh, okay.
The Giants were favored at one point, and I think that's insane. Why would they ever be favored in this matchup? I don't care that they're home. They're terrible, and the Seahawks have dropped 37 in back-to-back weeks. Like, what are we doing here? So, yeah, I mean, this is a very good lock of the week by RJ, who has been struggling to get his locks right. So, yeah, I like this pick by him. It's a pick 'em. Are you kidding me? Why aren't the Seahawks should be favored by like 3, 2.5, 3.5, somewhere in that range. Easy win for them.
Okay, that's that. Stephen, before we leave, Brandon and I both shared pet peeves. Brandon's about spoiling television shows and about this is a big number. I've shared a few of mine. So if you can give us some of your pet peeves, I think, round us out. We all are in the icebox, so we all have to offer some pet peeves, please.
Pet peeves. I don't know. I'm trying to think of something. I really just, a lot of mine are like social media related because I don't really like social media, but I use it as a product of my job. Fantasy threads, most annoying thing ever. Most annoying thing I could possibly think of. I despise them. Yeah. The fantasy threads, but these 5 guys, the guys in fantasy football, you got to buy right now. Click on my thread and it's 40 tweets long. I can't stand it. I despise it.
Just write a blog post. Come on.
Yeah.
That was oddly specific, but I mean, if it riles you up, I mean, that's what we were looking for here.
I have another one. Melt in your mouth.
Okay.
Not a good phrase. People use that wrong. It does not melt in your mouth. There's so many things that don't actually melt. An ice cube melts in your mouth. So many
theoretically everything melts
do not melt in your mouth. No, they do not melt in your mouth.
Everything does though. Like the process of melting happens.
Not the same way. A piece of steak does not melt in your mouth the way an ice cube does. Those are two different things. It would
if you left it in there for long enough. It does. It does melt
down, but it doesn't melt.
I don't think you understand what the word melt means. Like again, like
what are you talking about?
Every food melts to some degree. Like there is literal melting that happens in your mouth. Every single food.
No.
One more from me, I guess, since we're going around the bend. I don't know if you thought of another one, Stephen. I hate when people say things like, they're not getting any younger. Okay, who is? Like who is the person who's getting younger? Or like, I hate when people refer to a moment as fleeting. Like, oh, it's a fleeting moment. They are all fleeting. They're all equally fleeting. No moment is fleeting faster than another.
Maybe also, hasn't even arrived yet.
One last one. Since we're kind of doing this now. I hate the phrase, BLG is just trying to have his cake and eat it too. Because the proposition,
this on the mixtape.
Yeah, the proposition, Stephen, is that the two options are to have the cake and to eat it.
Yeah, I think you get this wrong.
They're not equally desirable options. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you can't, like, what is even the process or the state of having the cake? Who would choose to have the cake as opposed to eating the cake?
I don't really like cake that much, so I could have a cake and not really want to eat it.
Or there's a lot of bad cake out there.
Do you think cake melts in your mouth, Stephen?
Yes.
TGIF. All right, wrapping it up.